Are you serious? Is this Mike from around the world? Oh, no, I got to turn your volume way up. Hang on a second. Mike, are you there? Try that again. Oh, wait, Mike. Wait. We got a volume issue. Hang on. It's my fault. Try it again now, Mike. Mike, now let me see.
Yeah.
That's you.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, I hear you wonderfully.
Better? Okay, good.
Yeah, it was my fault on my end here. I'm using the Paul Begley technology tonight. I'm by myself tonight, so anything could happen.
Uh-oh.
I'm in a hotel room.
No worries.
I'm in the land of the fruits and nuts here in California. I mean, beautiful California.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike. Wow, good to have you tonight. We got a great crowd of folks gathering in. Lot going on, Mike. Lot going on.
Yeah, we have a lot of progressive situations.
Very true. Yeah. I want to get to General Milley tonight, but before I do, I want to start with the Jupiter collision. I want to talk about the Canary Islands. That volcano, they say, is about to blow, and what does that mean? But let's talk about the Jupiter collision, because that big, huge space rock hit Jupiter Monday evening. The precise time was 6:39 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It hit Jupiter. It was so big that the explosion was so bright that it was captured on an amateur telescope and has been confirmed, I guess, by NASA and some of the others. So, Mike, we've been waiting on this, that little green file. We've been waiting on this to happen, and this is probably the first of many. But what does this mean, Mike? Is this debris field coming? Are we getting really close now? Is this starting?
Oh yeah, I would say it is, and also with Jupiter, that was almost like a minor one, I guess you could say.
Minor?
Yeah, we'll have a lot. We'll have quite a few of those. Jupiter, normally it will grab objects in its vicinity and kind of eat them, right? It's like it's called the gatekeeper. Jupiter is actually Marduk. You ever hear that name?
Yes.
Marduk. There's a Marduk is also Jupiter, and it was told that Marduk will open the gates. That's an very ancient, very old statement that was written down thousands of years ago.
So
how they knew about Jupiter is pretty amazing. But
when they say it would open the gates, what do you think they meant at that time?
Well, it was even known back then, based on what was written. It was known that they knew about the asteroid belt around there somehow, and that it protected this inner solar system. We're in the courtyard. They named it the courtyard. This was documented by the Sumerians. This was documented by a few ancient civilizations. Even over here, some of the ancient writings in the Americas and Mexico contain the same things. Jupiter was known as a gatekeeper, which would often see Jupiter eating or blocking things from coming into the inner solar system. One of the big issues is Jupiter's chemistry is changing. It's getting hot. Jupiter is hundreds of times hotter. And that was discovered in 2015, 2017, I believe, 2020, and 21. The measurements are off the scales. So it's far hotter than what anybody thought, which caused a lot of, when you're dealing with celestial mechanics and mass and inertia, they had to go back and recalculate some things, finding some pretty massive bodies out there. One in the asteroid belt itself, two in the asteroid belt, but Jupiter has a gravitational pull or an attraction that will often draw things into itself. Jupiter's about to be overwhelmed. This object that it grabbed is one of many that are inbound. Now, some of those objects it did not catch, unfortunately, right?
Yeah.
Because it was a pretty wide spread. That was only one. There were a few that are still on the way, right? There's some that are not moving that fast, and some have their orbits changed. Now, one of my biggest concerns is this. JPL normally maps, well, not JPL, but that's what everybody's familiar with. They normally have the public map of near-Earth objects. But that whole chart has been altered a couple of times by Jupiter. Every time Jupiter is in proximity to one of these bodies, it changes the orbit of the objects, right? So these orbits are by no means consistent. Take, for example, Apophis. Apophis went way out there, but they know its orbit has been altered. They know it's been altered, right? There are other objects out there in space. Let me give you a scenario. Suppose Apophis goes out. We have all the calculations about when it's supposed to return, but then it gets perturbed by some other object out there, which could shorten the time by up to 9 years, right?
Whoa.
So, or it can lengthen the time. But normally it would shorten that time. So there'd be a slingshot effect, and it would come right back into our solar system long before we ever calculated it would come back. So some of the orbits in the heavens they're totally destabilized when you're dealing with some of these long durational objects.
Are you saying that Apophis, which is due on April the 13th, Friday the 13th, 2029, are you saying this thing actually could come sooner?
It could come next year. It could be on its way back right now. It could be here next year. It all depends on what's out there. See, that's one thing we don't think about. We don't think about other objects out there, right?
Right.
Nobody ever thinks about that. These rocks and everything flying around, they are often influenced by other objects. It's also known that Apophis had debris with it when it came by the last time. It was far from Earth, but some of the particles implied that it was near a star due to some of its radiation emissions and what it was carrying with some of that debris. So in a couple of days, those objects, one of the objects that Jupiter captured, one of the that astronomers saw in a few days, we're gonna have debris pass right by a probe. I'm sure they're going to analyze it and see, exactly where it came from, because there's a small chance it did collide with a few objects before it hit Jupiter.
Okay.
They were watching that, and if that's the case, that was probably something that was harmless, but it's not harmless anymore. You got to think of something. When something comes inbound into our solar system, it hits other objects often, unless it comes from, our southern region, deep southern region. But when you're talking about something on our ecliptic, on our plane of orbit with all these planets, that's a very dangerous scenario, right? For any of them to come through that way, it's a very dangerous scenario. To come from the north or the south is a bit better, but not something that Jupiter would actually suck up. That's just not a good scenario, because these objects do not travel by themselves. Normally, if you have a high-speed object going in a specific direction, you have other objects with them. So there could be objects inbound right now that Jupiter did not get. It just happened to pull in this massive one. And how that works is, the more massive an object is, the greater the gravitational pull by Jupiter, right? But the smaller objects are not going to be pulled in like that. No. Right? The smaller they are, the more they'll deflect away from Jupiter's gravitational pull. The larger they are, the more of a chance they are to just totally start changing their orbit a long time before they get to Jupiter. But the smaller ones build up momentum, and by sheer inertia, they just keep flying. So, we'll find out.
You're saying, so let's just talk about Apophis. So we see this big, huge, massive rock that has crashed into Jupiter, and truly, the Jupiter collisions is happened. There'll be more, but the little green file was correct. It did happen even in 2021. Okay, but there's a lot more. And what you're saying is Apophis, which is supposed to go buzzing by us less than 18,000 miles from the surface of the Earth, and this thing is 4.5 football fields wide. It's probably got some companion asteroids and meteors and stuff, rocks that are flying along with it out wider than it is. We could definitely get hit on that Friday the 13th of April in 2029, but you're saying, oh, well, time out. There's so much happening up there now with Planet X or this binary system and the gravitational pulls and the collisions up there, that this thing could come by maybe next year. And are you saying, Mike, that its trajectory could be totally different? I mean,
yeah.
they would know that then. If it was a year away instead of 9 years away, they know that.
They sure would. Because of the direction it's coming into, they would know. And we have probes outside. We have one probe outside of Pluto. We have observation platforms all over the place in the solar system, right? These are global. That means there were global teams that built these observation platforms just for those scenarios, which is why China is so nervous. Right now, one of the global fears is this, that the USA is not going to do anything about it. That's one of the global fears. And so you're going to see, I'll tell you what, the impact scenarios are so close. Like I said last week, we have moved into an area where, talking about it is one thing, but we're going to be reacting. We're going to start talking about, the post-impact stuff. That's what if we have comms that are that good, we're going to be saying, what was the damage in the Atlantic? What was the damage in the Caribbean? What was the damage over there in Africa from these impacts? You just watch and see. And there will be some monsters that pass Earth that every eyeball will see pass in our atmosphere. Very close. These are atmospheric disturbers, big time, because they're going to come, they will interact with our atmosphere, leaving trash in our atmosphere every time they pass. If they get caught in one of those perfect orbits, we could have an object that gets captured by the inner systems, and literally, every year and 2 months, it could pass us. It can get caught, kind of like a ball that goes down in a, if you had some type of a spiral drain and you drop a ball down in there, right, and it goes around in a circle, but the longer it goes, the faster it gets and the shorter the distance. That's what we're going to see, something that had a long durational orbit. And then the next time is much shorter. The next time it's much shorter, right?
So
a danger zone.
Yeah.
We're in a trashy area,
Mike, that
of the galaxy. Very trashy. This whole galaxy is moving, by the way. Our solar system is moving, by the way. We're going into parts of space we have never been in before. These things are better visualized by some sort of a presentation, but we're going into places we've not been before, and it's a lot of debris and some pretty big boys, big objects out there. So expect everything to change. When I say everything, I mean everything to change.
All right, let's talk about that a little bit then. As this is happening, and we have to come back to this because there's been a paradigm shift in what I'm hearing you say tonight is some breaking news, really. That there is, we know now we're entering into this meteor storm, and we're going to start seeing some stuff in the skies that's going to make men's hearts fail them for fear. They're going to know that this world is coming to an apocalyptic end, and that means Christ must be coming very soon. So we'll go to that. Let's talk about the Canary Islands right now. Right now, it's on high alert. Very concerned. There's been 4,222 earthquakes, small tremors that have hit the volcano there, and the magma's rising. It's a massive amount of magma that they know it's risen, and that the crater itself, the inner part of the crater is rising, and they're putting this on level 3 of a level 4 high alert. I have heard that if the Canary Islands blow, that it could create a massive landslide that could crash into the ocean and could even send the tsunamis to the East Coast. What is your realization of this situation with the Canary Islands?
Well, in the Atlantic, we have fracture zones in the Atlantic, right? If that bulge that's out there, those cracks continue to form, and that magma is really moving out there. I mean, it's really moving, which, by the way, is an early indication that we have a large destabilization event really about to happen. The displacement of water alone, right? In fact, it does not need to erupt. If they have a landmass weakening in that area, which will likely happen, and this is making a lot of people nervous, there could be a tsunami without indication, no indication of a tsunami. You have an under ocean shift of a landmass. It just drops out of nowhere, right? From evacuated magma chambers or a weakening crust. Imagine a level of the ocean dropping about 2 to 3 inches all at one time, and miles of it dropping 2 to 3 inches all at one time. That would actually swash or push the water in both directions, both to the U.S., South America, also Africa, Portugal, Ireland. All these places will be in trouble. And here we go again in the Italy and in France and all these places. They're going to be in big trouble. They're on the backside of this, and that volcano, that volcanic system, right? That let's call it tubing, is connected right to that big monster in Italy.
Oh.
And that's just not a good thing at all.
So
if it's active, if it's active, right, you're guaranteed Italy is going to have some very strange and dangerous activity also. It's not going to go by itself.
So see, these are the Spanish Canary Islands. So in other words, the tubing to those volcanoes on the Canary Islands connect also to the massive super volcanoes that are under Italy and the volcanoes in Italy, as well as that very, very fragile fault line. So you're saying this isn't good. It's not just Canary Islands having an explosion and a landslide. It's the magma of the whole region on the move that could cause anything and everything out there, including Italy and Rome.
Yeah, it could. And of course, Italy, when you're looking at Nice, Genoa, Florence, all these coastal places, they're very vulnerable places, right? Nobody's just going to just move out of them. Unfortunately, they sit very volatile piece of real estate that could easily shift, and then all that coastline all the way back to Turin. Places like Turin and San Marino, that's where the water line would be. It would be right there at that mountain edge, right? So that means the lands that are inland, when you start going inland, those lands could easily be swallowed up. So my goodness, that would be a water event that would just destroy lots of things. Now, you're talking at least 4 foot of water going all the way back to Turin, right? Turin and I believe it's Milan is the city north of Genoa.
That's a couple places. 100 miles. That's like 250, 300 miles.
Oh, yeah, it's a lot. Well, it's a lot of ocean water, because if we have that land drop, and these, think about a puzzle, right? A puzzle. You have all these different puzzle pieces. Look at a puzzle and imagine in between the puzzle pieces are tubing or magma tubing. That's how magma flows, right? Think about the crust as those puzzle pieces. And if you separate one piece, it disturbs all the rest. The earth is tightly packed, okay? It's not like we have loose floating pieces of the crust. That's not what the deal is. If you took all the water away, we're still one big solid piece of, we have one big solid piece of crust. If you take all the water away, you put the water in there, right? It covers up different places, and people get this idea that the land masses are separated. No, they're not. So then one disruption in one place will certainly activate in another place. And it just so happens that in that vicinity, right, that entire African plate would shift, would start to move. Right, and that's one of my worries with South America. Anything in the Caribbean or the Coscos province or Nazca Plate, any of those things start moving, California is going to have a bad day.
Oh, nice! I'll try to get on a plane as early as I can Sunday after I'm preaching here Saturday night. Oh, by the way, Mike, let me just say something real fast for you. Let's go to General Milley. Okay, let's go to the Joint Chief of Staff. What in the world is going on here? Milley has not denied he did this, that he made secret phone call. And I understand that that guys at this level talk to their counterparts around the world from time to time. And that's kind of how you keep from accidents from happening. But
yeah, that's right.
Trump, well, I guess apparently President Trump was considering getting nukes on standby as a deterrent to keep China from making any kind of a move. And at a certain point, and Milley made a secret phone call. It's that he called the Chinese counterpart and said, "Look, if this guy wants to launch, I'm going to call you first." What does that mean, Mike? I mean, did he cross the line there?
Of course he did. And what he was doing was, Trump didn't play, right? He didn't play games, right? No. This guy, he meant exactly what he said. And it's not that he was going to do a preemptive or anything, right? But he did, when he came into office, he checked the military arsenal, right? He did inventory on all that. That made some people nervous because under Democratic rule, nobody does a thing, right? Half the world could blow up and they'll say, let's have a meeting.
Right.
I'm just being frank with you. That's
right.
just the
You're
way they
being
operate.
Right. But that's right.
But Trump wasn't playing. Trump said, listen, if anything goes too far, we're ready. We're ready. And so, in fact, his strategy was, let's get this lined out. So if anything happens, we're ready so we can go on with other things. That's why these other nations started saying, well, I'm going to stop playing too, right? Let's talk to the guy. Yep. Because at first they said, well, he's an idiot, he's this. But when they really found out he was in power, when he began to give directives to the military and they started setting up shop in different places, talk time was over. It was time to show your hand to see what you're all about. And so some of the internal people who are Democrats or whatever the case, their loyalty compelled them to do that, because it was one of those times when a person could easily, when you're engaged with troops all the time, you're not engaged in politics, and somebody could easily tell you, hey, we got a coup forming or something like that, right? We got a crazy guy who's going to try and launch a nuclear weapon or something like that. He was never going to do anything like that. No. Trump would not have, but that was a talk. When you start talking about presidents and you start talking about their instabilities and this, that, and the other, I'm telling you, that can spawn the worst accidents you've ever seen. And normally people lose their lives. Every time that rhetoric gets started, troops die, which that kind of burns me up. It does. But with Trump, it was incredibly bad because you had a split the military. It was in the beginning, nobody wanted to trust him. Everybody's, said he was this and they said he was that. But when he came around a year and a half later, everybody changed their tune all at one time because they found out this guy's not playing. And then his advisements from military leadership, it was good then, because people said, hey, he's got our conservative values at heart. So let's take this serious and go forward, because he's serious about it. And everything started, shaping up. But of course, internal strife, things of that nature, traitors, backstab, you name it. Everything went south in the White House. And of course, what happened. But some of these generals out there, they have a loyalty to parties. Some of them are too political. And believe it or not, once you're part of the Joint Chiefs, right? You're not a field commander, so to speak. So you're one of your primary jobs is to communicate with those people in Washington. And if you hang around those folks enough, you're going to talk just like they do. You're going to adopt ideologies just like them and start believing certain things just like they do. So you have to have a draconian tongue to do that, not so much field commander. And that's what happened with this guy. Due to the circumstances, a lot of people are going to say, well, it's understandable. A lot of people thought that. But in truth, that should have never happened.
That can't happen.
It frightens you a little bit, because you think about something. If that conversation took place, then who else is doing the same thing? How common of a practice could that be, that somebody could actually leak like that? Nothing's done about it.
That's right? My point. If nothing is done with General Milley, and nothing's done with Hunter Biden, and nothing is done with the Afghanistan. I mean, Milley has got Afghanistan stain, and now a treason phone call to the Chinese. He's got this on his uniform. Is he still have a job tonight? I mean, that's how the Americans are thinking. Like, whoa! If this is what's happening at these levels, we're really not protected at all. I mean, we got great military, but look, who's calling the shots?
Yeah, I tell you what, with the counterpart situation and Joint Chiefs. Now, Trump he had loyal people close to him.
Yes.
He could have easily overrode that. He set that up on purpose because he knows how vicious Washington can be. But right now, this Afghanistan situation, this is beyond diplomacy. It really is. He can't, the president is in conversation with all these different countries, but I'm telling you, a table conversation is not going to fix it. Even in the Bible, it says they sit down and tell lies at one table. It's not going to work out. These guys are going to plot. These guys are linking up one to another, these terrorist organizations, and it's state-sponsored by multiple people. And eventually, they're going to do exactly what the Bible says they're going to do. And you know what? One of my pieces of advice is people ought to really direct their hearts towards the story of Israel and it being the birthplace of our faith, and really start thinking about that, because past Paul, time is coming when a lot of people are going to curse all the Jews over there. I'm just telling you how it is. There's a change in our government that's going to take place. It's going to scare people. It's just going to scare people. There's some changes in the European government that's going to scare people. France is going to try to resist, but they won't be able to. Those people are going to be scared. In those moments, we're going to see the fall of a few places in the world as the world realigns in a very different way. People are going to start to see this. And naturally, they're going to time this with their scientific reports of the Earth being so geologically active. They know the pulses that are inbound, right? They already know this. The last time when I was on, a couple of times before I was on your show, Past Paul, and if anybody remembers, I gave a couple of dates for the next pulses. Well, what do we have on those pulse dates? Earthquakes, large ones, right? So they know we have more pulses inbound, and they know we have objects inbound. Right.
Yep.
And this is not, it's not I'll tell you, we moved into an area. It's coming. It's not like 2 years off. It's not like a year off. There are some things headed here right now, and there's no missing Earth. It's just not going to miss Earth. And so we're going to change. There are going to be some things that most certainly change.
It sounds like a post-impact world is coming.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're going to be, we'll be on this. If I'm still alive and you're still alive, right? We can still communicate. We're going to be talking about an impact. We'll be talking about that impact. We'll also be talking about military action in the Middle East. And your audience, a lot of your audience is going to be in tears and in disbelief at what they see over there. Because I'll tell you, I'll say, no one has seen the weaponry this world has. They haven't seen China's weapons. They haven't seen the U.S. weapons. They haven't seen the Middle Eastern weapons, but they're about to see an arsenal that should be illegal to even have. It'd be better if the world went into a nuclear holocaust than for what these guys are going to use. But we have advanced too far. It's just too far. And, if you're, I'd be like, if your studio was so advanced that you really didn't have to do anything, right? It would change you as an individual when you have nothing else to strive for, no goal to overcome. When you sit back and have accomplished things, evil stirs. I'm telling you, evil stirs. And these folks, and when somebody finds out that you have something so advanced, they're going to be jealous. They're going to get angry naturally.
So,
right?
Mike, so you're saying maybe within a year, we're going to be talking post-impact. And the world's going to go crazy because of armies and things that's going to be happening. Is that right? You think within a year? Yeah. Okay, now let's talk about this. Okay, we're going to have another webinar. Our last webinar of this year is going to be in early November, in which we definitely want you to be a speaker for sure, because this is definitely an area that I know you have intel in and info. It's called The Armies of the Antichrist is the name of the webinar. We want to talk about the Middle East, the kings of the East, even if as it relates to, Iran, Iraq, now the void, the vacuum, the Taliban in Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia. We want to talk about Syria. In other words, the Euphrates River area and Babylon area and what have you. And then also this would include the Russians, the Chinese, the Americans, the British, the French. So let's go here for a minute. You said something 2 weeks ago, and I can't get this out of my mind. You said people are going to start organizing for the Iranian cause. Okay.
Yep.
So Heidi and I started doing some research, and we found out just this week that the 9/11 documents was released, and it basically swung the pinium, swung the guilt from Afghanistan, Pakistan to Saudi Arabia in a big way. If you read the documents, okay, that Bush was protecting the Saudis, and Biden is now wants to protect the Iranians. It seems like he's made several moves. So I'm going to say that's the 9/11 documents released. Also the United States removing the missile defense systems out of Saudi Arabia. That's kind of big. And by the way, Biden's going to completely withdraw from Iraq. That's kind of big because that's opening a gateway to Saudi Arabia directly from Iran. And you even made one last statement last week. You said, and by the way, Rome is going to choose. So,
yes, they will.
Okay, in this context of what I've just said, where can you tell us what's going on? Why is the Biden administration making these shifts? Have they decided to side with Shiite side? Is America going to go to the Shiite side under the Biden administration? What's going on, Mike?
Well, they understand that a large civil war is afoot in the Middle East, and this is something that possibly some folks don't quite understand yet. But in the Middle East, before he pulled the troops out of Afghanistan, Pastor Paul, the chatter was so high as to which group or organization would rule in the Middle East. Now, it's not like we're not talking about ISIS going around trying to establish themselves. That's not what we're talking about.
Right.
We're talking about groups that have access to nuclear armaments is what we're talking about. Number one. So we're not talking about somebody out there with BB guns. We're talking about folks that have access to nuclear armaments. Now, you ask yourself, how can they have access to nuclear armaments? Because they don't, in the Middle East, when it comes to a fight, they consider themselves brothers. Yeah. Nobody else is to interfere with their fights when they are brothers. That means you're not going to tell any commission the truth about their dealings with terrorist organizations. Pakistan will not, right? They won't do it. Iran is not going to do it. Saudi Arabia is not going to do it. Turkey is not going to do it. Lebanon and although Egypt is not going to do it. So they consider that a family issue, and it's about to be solved. The chatter was so high, and the plans were so elaborate. These plans were not done by, non-militant minds, but brilliant tacticians, and that bothered and disturbed a lot of people. So much so that China is basing their movements on the aftermath of this civil war. That's why China's making these movements. China's saying, okay, this side is going to win, so let's align with this side, because they've shared those plans with their, external allies for support. Why do you think China is positioning themselves in several strategic areas? That's backup. That's what that is. That's command and control. It's setting up right before our eyes. And when it breaks out, the worst place our guys can be is right there in the middle of it. So in the Middle East, you're going to see a lot of spec ops doing operations in there, but eventually they're going to draw back to, different places, because why have our guys in the middle of a civil war? Right? It's all going to pot. That's why I said the last time on the show, anybody left in Afghanistan is going to die. Because the hammer's going to fall. It's so
you're saying the Great War, the Middle East beast, the Shiite Sunni, it's time to throw down. Countdown is about to happen, and China's saying, okay, it's going to happen. We're going to now we'll make a move after that's done. The United States is withdrawing back as well. They know it's going to happen. British know it. The French know it. Everybody's pulling back. Let's wait to see what's the aftermath, and then we'll figure out the playing field. Israel's in the middle of this, Mike. Israel's in the middle of this.
Yes, they are. And they know they're in the middle of it, which is why they need U.S. support. They were trying to get U.S. support to preempt a few places, right? Yeah. They're trying to prop up a general situation for the media. So everybody who looks at the news says, oh, it's a normal situation. Don't pay attention. No, this is by no means. This is not some normal situation. This is an internal fight. And the top dog is going to be, they're going to be the, the king of the caliphate in the Middle East is what's happening. But the sheer number of individuals involved will blow your mind. And that's what really caught people by surprise, right? 2 years ago, they began to plan and talk about it. Last year, it was just too much to believe. This year, the evidence came out, right?
Yeah.
Intel and counter intel, due to reports and everything else, the thing wasn't looking good. That's why Rome has to make a decision, because believe it or not, Rome is going to be drawn into it. Either Rome will be drawn into it, or Rome could potentially fall because they're too close, right? They're too close to that province. So anybody in the direct line of these fights, they're drawn into it. They have no choice. They either side with one or the other, whatever the case is. They're going to have to make a decision and decide, or they're going to be burnt up to the ground. They will burn to a crisp. So, it's really becoming becoming serious. Kind of like back before in the 1940s. If you look back in history, similar things have happened on a brutal scale. These guys are brutal too.
Well, let's face it.
Everybody can see how brutal these folks are.
Right.
And what they're doing is they're holding back. They're not going to, do anything wild, because they're reserving all of their strength and strategy for the other Muslims in that country. So you're looking at a Muslim to Muslim war.
Yes.
That's about to take place.
Yes. And who could get drawn in? The Vatican or Rome, and Jerusalem or Israel. And that's happened that happened in the 1400s. I mean, back in 700, 800 years ago, those two eternal cities were also drawn into this conflict. And it sounds like we're getting ready to have a Islamic war between the Shiites and the Sunnis, and they're going to hammer it out, and somebody's going to become the caliphate leader. And you got countries like Turkey who have nukes, Pakistan who have nukes, and probably the Iranians have nukes, and some of the other proxies running around. But you're saying this could actually draw Rome and even Israel into this. And let's just ask a question, because also 3 weeks ago, it was French President Emmanuel Macron who went to Baghdad and met with the Iranians, the Iraqis, the Afghanis, the Saudis. I mean, what was he doing there? What's up with that?
Because they understand what's about to take place. In fact, haven't you seen most Western or Democratic leaders talking to the Middle Eastern individuals strategically, these placed individuals? So that's what you're seeing right now, is you see presidents of the Western culture talk to these folks in the Middle East all of a sudden, all of them, right? You see China is positioning themselves both financially, right, militarily, and in other ways to support operations in the Middle East. And that's very important to note. All these movements that you see China making, they're for support. That's support for the Middle Eastern crisis that's about to happen. This brings me back to Daniel, and I can't get my mind off this one scripture in Daniel 11 when it says, all those who have indignation against the Holy Covenant, right?
Yep.
He's going to have them on their side, right? All of them. Anybody who has indignation against the Holy Covenant, he'll have control over their arms. It says arms will stand on his part. And those are the ones, it says they, plural, collectively will pollute the sanctuary of strength.
Yep.
So you have this coalition of individuals in the Middle East, and all of them have one thing in common. They hate the Holy Covenant. They have indignation, a severe disdain for the Holy Covenant. And by their own faith, they cannot permit that to continue to take place, right?
That's right.
It's coming, but it's coming quicker than anybody thought.
So Israel certainly, when you start talking about the Holy Covenant God made with Israel, the land of Israel, the Holy Land, the caliphate has always been.
That's why I'm losing your cell phone.
Okay. I'm still here.
The signal is, okay, there you are.
Still here. Okay. So, yes, this is why Jerusalem is absolutely the apple of God's eye and is becoming the point of contention for the whole world, the beast that's coming. Let's ask some more questions, Mike, before time gets away from us here. Okay, we got to talk about what's happening with China, and because the United States just signed a pact, a nuclear submarine pact, if you will, with Australia and the British and the U.S. and China not happy with this. What's your take on this? Is this because Australia feels really threatened now by the Chinese, don't they?
Well, Australia is, I tell you what, they've got a few tricks up their sleeve. So if they wanted to, they could make a difference. The problem is they're so close to the Chinese, right?
Right.
It's not a good position, because if China were to launch some things against Australia, it'd take too long to get them the support needed to, kind of help them out a bit. So yeah, they don't like that either. But unfortunately, that's going to take place, and more things like that will take place. Folks, the world is altering quickly before our eyes, faster. I would say as things are happening at least 9 years faster than what we ever thought they would be. So what I'm saying is that things you would expect to happen 10 years from now, they're happening right now.
This is huge. And is the driving force of that, Mike, Apophis or Planet X, Nibiru, the incoming impact scenario? Is that driving everybody speeding up, or is it just prophecy?
I think it's a combination, Pascal, and I think one of the biggest things right now in the minds of those who rule countries is not so much something external, but something internal. I believe that these guys, people can never forget, these guys are driven spiritually by forces that are extremely real, right?
Yeah.
They believe in their deities. Those deities manifest to them frequently. So they're doing everything for them. There's a term maybe some people will begin to hear, is they're waiting for the door to open. All things are being prepared for the door to open. And here it is. There's a door that they have, right? A door. A door will open up, and the king of this earth will step on the stage, and that's what they're preparing things for. Now, to my knowledge, they've been given a date to prepare for this. There's an actual date for this. There's a date for this. There are things that have to happen in the earth. There are lots of things that the populace has to volunteer. They can't force the populace to serve the king of this world. The populace has to volunteer to serve the king of the world. One of the philosophies is this, Pastor Paul. How do you get somebody to freely serve anything? How do you get somebody to freely serve anything? What you do is you break them down mentally, right?
Yeah.
You cause them to lose mental control over their own environment. In other words, the populace will not know what's happening around them. They're not going to have situational awareness, right? Which makes a person nervous. That is, you have to chip away at their security. So you make them feel like they have no security.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, the plagues, coronavirus, whatever the case is, all these things come about, but they chip away at the security of the people. The people get to the point where they call out for leadership. This is what people are doing now. And you know what's so funny? 12 years ago, a couple of guys, we spoke about this, about the world calling out for leadership. I specifically remember you talking to an individual that was on your show, and he said, Paul, they're going to generate an insuperable problem, and somebody will come on the stage to be able to solve it.
That's right.
And the people would call out on a leader. Well, this is not changed. People are doing that right now. What are they saying? It didn't matter what they're saying, but they want their leadership. People can translate that however they want. They're calling out for something on earth, not for the Lord in heaven. They're saying we need a better this, or we need a better that on earth. They're not crying out for Jesus. They're crying out for a person or something like that.
Yes.
So they've already accomplished that step. But in that step, the hammer falls, which means in that step, when they're crying out for leadership, the way of life they previously had has to be broken. Everything has to be broken up.
That individual you're talking about is the late Father Malachi Martin. And he said that the Antichrist, that the world would call for him. They would beg for him. They would look for him to who could solve the insuperable problem, who could solve what cannot be solved. And he would emerge. He would then rise on the scene with the answer, or what seems like the answer. and they will flock to him. They will willfully worship him. And you're right, Mike. So you're saying it's not going to be forced on us. We're going to call for it. I mean, as a world, not the Christians, not us that are love Jesus, although a lot of Christians will be deceived. What I mean by that is they're not caught up on what's going on. They're not following what's going on in prophecy, so they'll be caught flat-footed. I know that, and you know that. And that's why this show's so important. This is why we do these Thursday night programs every week, folks. Mike takes time out of his very busy schedule to come here every Thursday night and to take on the toughest questions, or I should say areas of concern that's beyond the pale of what most people are. It's beyond the rhetoric of the talking heads on cable news network. We're talking real world stuff happening right out of the pages of the Bible. And Mike, when you said tonight, you've made so many key points tonight that I couldn't even say, what? Are you serious? Because I couldn't even get it out. When you said we're about 9 years ahead of prophecy right now. When you said, the Apophis is probably 9 years ahead of where it was, okay, or 8 years. You got all these things happening, and the great armies of the Antichrist, the Canary Islands, the impacts that are coming. There's no question that we have moved into a new arena. There's been a paradigm shift. Mike, as a matter of fact, I just did a video. I recorded the DVD. It's an hour-long sermon, a teaching with all the graphics and everything. It's called Revelation 9:11, which Revelation 9:11 is the opening of the pit, the releasing of Apollyon. And it's a paradigm shift. He hasn't been turned loose. And as he's being released, it's a game changer. And I'm hearing you say we're entering into that phase right now. We're entering in right now. Yeah. Let me ask you. I would say so. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I say so. And unfortunately, it's very unfortunate that that they're breaking loose right before people's eyes. But something extraordinary is happening. It's almost like people are losing their ability to see.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
It's almost like they cannot see it. One small example of this, I can't say here, it's too long, but I happened to watch one of these weird shows on television, right? And I could see the trickery involved. But you had experts commenting on these videos as though they were real. And I could see the trickery. And I was asking myself, why can't they see the truth? Why can't they see the truth? And it bothered me. Well, the same thing is happening all over the world. People cannot see the truth. And one of the deals is this, Pastor Paul, when a person wants to be right about something, they're going to ignore the truth. When they want to be right, they're going to totally ignore it. And when they really are, when pride sneaks in, and when that pride sneaks in and we try to make something right, well, we really messed up. And it's unfortunate because a lot of people right now, if they're not careful, if they don't stand their ground on Christ and say, Lord, you got this, I do not. I'm an observer, but you orchestrate these things, not me. I'll stand up with my lot, but you've got this. If we don't remember that Jesus has it, we're going to step before him. We're not going to follow him. We're going to precede him or go before him. We're going to think. And when we do that, we're in trouble. We're outside of the blood of the Lamb and in pride. And unfortunately, it's happening in the world due to morale, degradation, certain things. People can hardly see sin anymore, Pastor Paul. No. I, for one, am still sickened by most of what I see in the world. It still sickens me.
Yeah.
But there are so many people who are so complacent, they don't even mention it. They'll complain about, this area over here, this area over here, but they won't complain that the family unit is busted and broken. They won't complain that this immorality has spread too far. And it seems like, everybody everybody has a closet, but nobody's in the closet anymore, if you can figure out that term. But that's what it seems like. And these same individuals that have, it's just too many people are sitting complicit with this, just like Jesus said. But, when people stay on this course, a lot of them are being turned over. And now they're being offended if you call them out on it. If you say, look, that's just not the way to go, right?
Right. Oh,
that's
not the way to go. They get angry.
Goodness, they get offended.
Yes.
If somebody criticized me and said, Mike, you got to, you ought to step back, I'll say, thank you, brother, because I can't see everything. I rely upon people pointing out things I can't see. There's always something I cannot see. Right.
All of
but us. It's almost a loss of that in this world anymore.
Mike, one more subject I want to touch on, at least, and that is food prices. We're hearing Kroger, Publix, Costco, all of the big manufacturers of food are saying, guys, we can't help it. Food is up 8%, and it's gonna skyrocket. Oil is skyrocketing. They're also saying there's not enough food. The droughts, especially, are affecting the food production. The lack of water is affecting the amount of food they can grow. And there's not enough grain to feed the livestock, so they're starting to cull the livestock. Mike, are we getting ready to go into a global food crisis as to the point that they're going to change even what we eat and how we get food?
Yep. Fastball, I'll tell you this. People are going to have their money, right?
Yep.
They're going to have if they're smart, they're going to have the money. They're going to have their money, but they won't have certain products anymore. Remember, I was telling everybody to change their diets, start to decrease the palate, your taste palate. Start eating dull foods, don't season it so much. Right? It's very important because if you change your diet all at one time, it can play psychological tricks on your mind. It will change your attitude and everything else. But if you take seasoning away from the food and start eating bland foods, you'll notice the flavors is 3 times higher. For example, every time I used to go out into the field, I would come back and I couldn't eat regular food. It was just too much seasoning. But I could eat a cracker and taste the butter in it. I could taste every ingredient in a saltine plain cracker, and even it was a bit overwhelming. So your palate can change very quickly. But if you back down on all your seasonings, your diet's going to be more universal, more healthier, right? You won't crave certain things, just specific things.
Right.
Due to a lack of choice of foods, and the way they do foods now, something people don't know, you can't eat everything you think you can eat, because a lot of people their bodies have become chemically dependent on certain ingredients, and if they go to something else, they're going to get sick. Yep. They're going to have a physical reaction. A lot of people know nothing about that, but there's so many foods out there you can become physically dependent upon, just like a drug. And if you stop doing it, you're going to have withdrawals. If you switch to something else, you're going to have a reaction, right? And so the best way to do that is to start limiting what you eat, how you season it, and everything else, and start eating bland foods, because people they're not going to have the choice of foods here shortly. They're just not. Too many things have been destroyed. With COVID-19, a lot of the livestock had to be killed, right? It wasn't being sold like the cows, for example. They were dumping millions and millions of gallons of milk out of the machines. Some of the machines that used to support some of the processing is gone, because when no one buys the beef, you can't run the machinery, right?
Nope.
You can't slaughter things either. You'll cause disease all throughout the state. And so they ended up having to get a lot of animals got sick. All sorts of things happened. But now they can't hire people back. So production has almost halted. We can't even get some of the plastic products we used to get because our relationship with China is breaking down, and we can't trust everything from China. They've already found large crates and shipments of plastic containers and bags tainted with things it shouldn't be tainted with. Imagine that. Imagine a grocery bag that's poison in the materials or something like that. Listen, but these are things, that actually do happen. It is good they don't tell the public, because that would make everybody nervous if they knew. There are thousands of things that happen like that every single day. But it's always those things you don't think about. That's what really gets you. It's the things you do on a daily basis that can become dangerous. That's the avenue. If they're going to get you, they're going to get you through one of those avenues you use on a daily basis. That's what they're going to do. Everything else is smoke and mirrors. I'm telling you that now. But the real deal is what you use every day, because they've already caught China and some other folks and things. They have shut down certain companies and corporations and prosecuted people. People have been put to death for things like that they've done that the public doesn't know anything about. So this stuff is increasing, though. It's increasing, and technology opens the door to a lot of things. So, folks, I tell you, when you see the white trains running on the railways, you already know what happened. They will have a special marking on them. You'll see them all over the place. They're going to start making deliveries. You're going to go in your store. You're going to see a stamp on foods with nothing but that stamp, and you'll be able to see the food. You'll still have your money to get it with, right? If you're smart in these times, you'll still have money to get it with, but you will not have the product selection that you're so used to. So picky people, picky eaters, it's my advice to you to back down on your palate.
White trains.
If you ever wanted to go on a diet, now's a good time. Start fasting, do what you have to do, but transition yourself and understand that conditions are deteriorating.
White
as far as
trains.
what was available.
White trains running on the railways.
Oh, yeah.
So it's government food. It has to be specially stamped. The selection of what we've been used to having, all these different companies producing all these different flavors and options is going away, you're saying?
Yeah, that will almost, they're vanishing already. That's why all those spam commercials came out.
I know. And when you go to the grocery store, you don't have 6 different types of spaghetti sauce. You got 1, maybe 2. And there ain't many cans there or jars. You're exactly right. It's all going to these non-labeled brands, okay? Walmart's got 1 main brand and 4 of their own private label. Same thing at Meijer, same thing at Publix, same thing at Kroger. So what you're saying is, there's just like in the banking world, we only got 6 banks. We got a few little ones, but they're all being consumed by the 6. And those 6 are all run by the government, and the governments are being run by the Illuminati. So basically, you're saying we're getting ready to see the same thing in the food supply system. The white trains running on the railways.
Yeah,
this might have been the scariest. That's one of the scariest things I've heard all week. But it's a real. I know how you are, Mike. When you make a statement like that, then down the road we start seeing the white trains on the railway, and we say, "Oh my God, Mike told us that."
Oh, it's coming past fall, so I tell you. And the banking system, my goodness, 2022 is implementation year. I think people have forgotten that. Everything is implemented 2022, not 2023, but 2022.
So now
that's next year.
Next year. So next year I got to look forward to a new banking system implemented, stamps on the food maybe, and a POFIT's coming 9 years early.
Yeah, the food thing, you're going to see that this winter. You'll see that this winter.
Mike from around the world is sharing with us again his heart, folks. Mike, there's 7,500 people out there right now. They better get ready because Jesus is coming soon. But it's going to be some tough times first, right, Mike?
It's true, but you know what? It's for someone who does not know Christ, it will be tough. For those who know Christ, look at his promises again. He will not fail at any of them. He'll
Amen.
sustain us during this. You know what? One thing, we know Christ, we know the scriptures, right? There's one thing we're not accustomed to. We're not accustomed to his supernatural deeds. We're about to learn why he does above the natural. Because he said he's able to do above and beyond what we're able to ask or think. And if that's the case, if you look at that scripture, Pastor Paul, that means if I ask for something, right, he's going to go above and beyond.
Yes.
What I've asked for to
Absolutely.
do not only what I need, but what I could even dream about.
Right.
So he does above and beyond what we're able to ask or think. We're in good hands. So if we're washed by the blood of the Lamb, we're in good hands.
So what you're saying is you're going to make a choice, folks. You're either going to trust the government to sustain you, or you're going to trust God, who you should be trusting anyway, and we already have. But I mean, it's coming down. You really got to figure out in whom you believe, and you got to stay with Christ.
That's right,
Mike.
Amen,
brother. You're on the money. See you next Thursday night, brother.
I'll be here, Pastor Paul, Lord willing. God bless you, brother. It's always a pleasure. Always an honor.
It's an honor to have you on every Thursday. God bless you, brother.
God bless you.
Mike from around the world. Are you saved?